Hey guys, and welcome back to another podcast, another solo podcast. So I'm back with myself today purely because organising a time with George will happen very soon. It's just we're both in busy phases at the moment, coming up to Christmas, social events and things like that, and obviously me travelling. And obviously last episode I covered my trip to LA. With the WNBF World, so I won't be talking about that much, but with the travel and everything going on at the moment, it's just a little bit harder to communicate and to get a good time sorted between the two of us. Obviously, being between Sheffield, Birmingham as well for myself, understanding when people are free is a little bit difficult. I'm in Sheffield this weekend, or at least I have been over the past weekend, and I will be heading to New York, as I've said in the last podcast. Be heading to New York on Friday with Danny for basically an actual holiday. So actually not going away for a bodybuilding show or anything like that. Purely going away for a holiday, which I'm really excited for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting away, spending some time sort of not doing work for a little bit, which will be good. Trying to take off the gas a little bit from check-ins and things like that. So it'll be one of the first times that I've done that in a long time. And I think, in all honesty, I needed it a little bit sooner because I've seemed to have come across maybe a slight, you could guess I could call it an injury, just basically developing an exertion-based headache over a period of a few sessions which weren't, I wasn't feeling too right, and then I just kept pushing, and yeah, I think that I've pushed myself back into a position which I've experienced once before, but it was a little bit worse once before because I didn't know what it was, so I just kept training. And you shouldn't really keep training when you get one of these things. Basically, it feels like you've got it's basically very similar to a migraine or a tension headache, where you get sort of a pounding feeling in your head that lasts for a while. When you train, you tend to make it worse. And if anyone's experienced it, I'm sure that they'll know exactly how it feels. I'm sure plenty of you have. I know Steve Hall has experienced it. I had a client, actually, funny enough, I communicated with Steve earlier in the week about a client. So I just wanted to get some information off of him because one of my clients had it. And then, I managed to pick one up myself. But yeah, they suck. They really do, because they do take a while to clear, and they do affect your sort of day-to-day a little bit as well, because they essentially just give you a light headache and a bit of a foggy brain throughout the day. It depends how bad you make them as to the severity that they are during the day. But yeah, something interesting for you guys there. Just essentially be careful when you start to feel like a little bit off in the gym with your headaches or things like that. You can make them fairly bad, and it's not nice at all. So, but that will dissipate fairly soon, and I'll probably be back into sort of like an intro week phase after New York. We may well get some light sessions in New York, and they'll be absolutely fine for me. But after that, I'll probably just sort of slowly ramp up my training again, because I haven't had a deload, like an actual deload or time off training, since before we went to Paris, which was actually about 2.5 months ago. So yeah, it's been a while, and to be honest, like the way my body was feeling just before I picked up this niggle was pretty much giving me all the signs that I needed to sort of start to back off. So we can look into HRV, we can look at blood glucose and all this biofeedback, but guys, you're going to know when you need to back off, and it's just about listening to your body and being an adult in that situation. And I honestly wish every time, I really want to portray this, and actually I want to listen to this fucking podcast myself one day and really start to think about it a little bit more. I really wish that I backed off a little bit sooner. I really did, because I knew that I wasn't feeling right. I knew that I shouldn't have pushed myself through some sessions that I did push myself through, and it always ends up with something negative. It always does. And I tell you what, I don't think I've gained much positive out of it. I mean, yes, I squatted 108 kilos for 10 reps, and it was fantastic, and that set felt really good, but the rest of that session definitely made my head worse. Then Saturday's session, which was upper body, it was an alright session, not groundbreaking, but again, probably made me feel worse. And then yesterday's push session was just the icing on the cake. Like, I was like, can't be training at any sort of decent intensity with this. So yeah, plan is to take some time off now, like actual rest days. So I'll be resting until, most likely resting completely until Thursday, and then Thursday I may get in some light blood flow stuff. But I may well just rest again and then travel. Obviously enjoy our time in New York. Primary goal is to enjoy that holiday. I may get some very light sessions in if we get time whilst we're away, but it won't be anything groundbreaking again. Which it wouldn't be anyway. So it's not a huge loss. It would have been a deload anyway for us, regardless of whether I was well or not. But yeah, the main goal is just to get better as soon as possible, which I will do. And this again, just this part of a long term vision. You've got to realize that these little bumps are just bumps in the road, and you'll be back on it in no time. And it is frustrating in the moment, but it's something that always you're going to learn a lesson out of it, and I've certainly learned my lesson again. Not that I needed telling. But yeah, guys, so I hope all you guys are well. I hope you're all having good weeks and good productive weeks of training. Hopefully you can take something from that little intro. Again, like I usually like to give a bit of an update as to where I am, where I'm at, and hopefully give something informative away on it. But besides that, like before that, training really, really good. Like hitting some good PBs. Squat obviously 180 for 10. Had a couple of really good sessions with Lewis Rossi, albeit probably shouldn't have done them. And then also I've been strong across pretty much all of my pressing, strong on my sumo deadlifts, pulling 200 for 5.5 and 180 for 12. Like getting some really, really good progressions going. So I'm sure I'll just be straight back at it once I ramp things up again after New York and after everything's feeling good again, which it will do. So yeah, other than that, let's crack into some of the questions on the Q&A. Thanks again for the questions, guys. Got about 20 through, so I will cover as many as possible. Again, just going into as much depth as I can share. So Hamza sort of asked about, he notices how motivated I am when I work, and asked me as to whether I've got a routine for my day and how I avoid distractions. So I do have a routine. In fact, I bring up every time before I sort of like either go into my day or before, usually it's at night, I'll get up my notes section on my Mac and I'll just pull it up and I'll write the day and I'll write a tick list of what I want to get done. Whether it's what whether it's what body palm training, steps I want to accrue. Even today, like today's list was like one of the boxes to tick was actually just rest. Obviously, outside of that was check-ins. It was setting up a few new people on coaching sheets. It was had a couple of consult calls. So things like that. Just like ticking away at boxes like you would in a training session. Like logging what you have in front of you, having a direction and a vision for your day, really important. So yeah, just try and create a bit of direction, a bit of vision for each day. That should give you a lot of confidence to head into the day with an element of workflow, and then that should just sort of replicate itself in your efficiency, and therefore you shouldn't get distracted too frequently because you have what you've got to get done in front of you, and if it doesn't get done, it's as simple as that. It won't get done. So setting up sort of time schedules and allotments into when and which you want to get each specific task done, that's also really helpful. So yeah, I find that working in blocks is also important too. So I've done for today. I've done my sort of check-in block, and now I've moved on to all the other things that I need to do, and then the podcast and sort of any other bits of content sort of come later in the day, which is again just like the way that I like to set up my day. But again, it's personal preference. Getting yourself into an environment that sort of is good for you as well. So like for me this morning, a coffee shop was good. Didn't really get distracted at all. Just got my head down. Trying to keep social media away, so I didn't really open social media until about midday. I didn't really look on Facebook at all. Just trying to limit the external distractions that you may well have through social media, things like that. Really important. So yeah, just try and do that. Adam, opinions on neck training. So I haven't really done any direct neck training. I know that Jeff Nippard was quite or popularized this when he started training his neck. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I don't really think that there's a huge benefit from training your neck directly. I think there would be more people doing it if there was. I think that he did get some growth, but I think the majority of you'll just generally look big in like t-shirts and things like that if you have really big traps. So focus on getting like ginormous traps, and then you'll probably look big in t-shirts if that's your goal. But for a bodybuilder, I don't think training the neck directly is something that we need to be looking into at all, to be honest. So yeah, that's my opinion on neck training. Short opinion, but willing to change my views on that if someone proves me otherwise, by the way. Tom, so what goals do I set for coaching business, not monetary, example clients per month? So Tom, I've gone both ways on this. I think I mentioned in my last podcast, I had a period of time last year this year, where my client roster was too high. I wasn't able to deliver the exact level of service that I wanted. It was still good, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted, okay? So I took from that the fact that I can't really, realistically go much over 50 clients without being in a bit of a trouble zone in terms of providing the quality that I want to provide, okay? And that's through like really in-depth feedback videos, being at their beck and call on WhatsApp, and being able to answer questions fairly swiftly. And then that's also, when it comes to peaking, having an awareness of building that relationship with the client, knowing where they're at, and knowing their exact sort of meals, knowing what they're eating, knowing how to program that effectively. And I think I lost my way a little bit with that when it came to, I want to work with as many, because I'm being honest with you, like, coaching excites the hell out of me. So when I get a new client, like I had a couple of consults today, and a lot of them just like generally excite me. So I find it really, really difficult to turn people down. I have done, I have done in the past. I have had to turn people away, and I certainly will do at the start of this year and coming into next year. It's why I'm saying people now, like, if you're really interested, please do contact me, because I've got a lot of people on my 2019 roster, and there's going to be a limit, and it's really, really upsetting when I get someone superb come along and like, can I work with you? And I could, but it's just not really feasible within my sort of structure and how I want to give feedback and how I want to work from a business perspective. So, yeah, I think that it is important to make sure that you have some element of a cap. So my target, so to speak, is just to stay within I'm happy as a coach with anywhere between 30 and 45, 50 clients. And that is really the gap. I quite happily just work with 30 individuals. If I had 30 hardworking individuals, make more than enough money, I'd be comfortable from that perspective, and I'd also just be happy with that workload. So I am not like avidly searching to take on board as many people as possible. I've had quite a few people start up recently. You may have seen on my Instagram a lot of people starting up, and that's purely out of the fact that I've got the room and I'm motivated to do so. And I think that obviously being in a prolonged surplus helps with that. I mentioned that in my last podcast too. So hopefully that answers your question, Tom. Any further response on that, let me know. Callum, just for fun, never be able to track your lifts or never be able to track your food. Wow. I think tracking my food would be less of a worry on my initial front, because what I do is just eat the same thing every day, and then just, if I was dieting, start pulling out specific meals. I know what a 25 carb pull is, so I'd be able to do that just instinctively. But tracking my lifts, that would be something that I'd be a little bit upset by. I think I'd be more upset by not having a logbook and not being able to track my data in the gym. But I'd know what I was doing, and I'd be able to go back in and try and beat it. You know what I mean? But I think I'd feel a little bit more sort of happy within myself if I was able to still track my lifts, not track my food, but I'd still be tracking my food to some extent, because I'd be eating the same thing every day and just pulling from specific meals. Get what I mean? So yeah, bit of a good question, but when you think it through, it's actually quite easy to just get away with tracking both of them if you have enough understanding. Simon, so supplementation, is whey isolate really worth it versus standard whey? So if you look at absorption rates, isolate is going to be faster absorbing, and also for most people it tends to be beneficial in terms of the fact that it doesn't contain lactose. So for people who are lactose intolerant or just generally have a bad reaction to things with lactose in it, again, that's a benefit. The quality, again, you could argue that potentially an isolate is a better quality than a concentrate. But again, you're looking more directly at digestion rates from that perspective. But yeah, I would say that for most people, especially like in a prep as well, it's beneficial to have an isolate because again, it's lower calorie, it's lower fat usually than a normal concentrate protein, or a blend. So yeah, that's my opinion, Simon. I think an isolate is a worthwhile purchase for a serious bodybuilder. What do you take into account when setting up clients' macro splits? So usually it's just Jamie. It's like, where are they right now? So the first thing that I'll ask when someone's being set up is, what the hell are you doing right now? Like, are you tracking your macros? What calories are you consuming? What's your macro split? I generally just get an idea as to where they're at currently. From where they're at currently, then I can start to devise, okay, what can we do to improve this? Can we make this better? Can we change around the split? Or is the goal to lose body fat from this phase, or into another phase and losing body fat? And if obviously the goal is to remove body fat, then it's a case of pulling down from wherever they're currently consuming. If they've got no structure whatsoever, it really is just a case of taking into account their body weight, taking into account their general activity or NEAT throughout the day, and then taking into account obviously how many times they're weight training, and then just basically from an understanding of working with many clients, you'll be able to pretty much accurately predict where their calories are going to need to be. And then from there, it's a response of what their scale weight is doing. So if their scale weight is dropping and the goal isn't to drop, obviously that client needs more food. If their scale weight is going up and the goal is to drop, that client needs less food. But you shouldn't really come into that scenario because you should be, over the course of time coaching, being able to develop an awareness as to where you start clients' calories, how you pull them back, and what certain individual needs. Okay, but that's something that again you just learn over the coaching process. But yeah, the general things in terms of, I don't use like calculators or anything like that when I set up a client. So Bogdan, trace protein coming from carbs makes 1 gram of protein per pound easy to hit. Should you include? Yeah, I mean I think I've covered this question before. So when your carbs are really, really high in an off-season phase, hitting 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein is fairly easy because you work up a lot of trace proteins in your carbohydrates that you're eating. So with that being said, an increase in overall protein intake is probably key because at that point, you're going to be losing out on your better quality or higher bioavailability proteins in your diet because you're accumulating so many from just your carbs. So having a higher protein total on a whole is probably a good option at that point. And then obviously making sure that you're hitting a leucine threshold of sort of 20-25 grams of protein per meal from quality sources will be what you'd ideally want to do in that phase. And then again, there's obviously been some research into protein feedings, the amount at which you want. I would say that from an optimality standpoint, you want at minimum 5 servings of protein per day. And then if you look at really, really, really sort of the upper echelons of maybe gaining 1%, maybe you want sort of 4 whole meals at least, and then maybe 2 protein-based snacks like a shake or a bar or something like that. Albeit make sure the bar is 20 grams. There's some bars which are 19 grams or 18 grams, which to me is just absolutely absurd. I just don't know why they do that. So hopefully that answers your question. Stefan, tips for someone who's starting their own online business, or online coaching business, sorry. So I'm going to first up say that you just need to be patient because it's such a slow process initially. Unless you're very lucky and you get like a huge bolus of people come in. For example, someone who's done really well recently, Jack Piad, my friend, I remember him starting with very, very few clients. And he's worked it up over the period of a whole year. He's really invested a whole year into building up his online coaching business, and now he's pretty much closing in on being full. And that's possible for so many people if you put the work in. So you've got to be willing to put the work in, but over the long time. It's not going to take 2 months. There may well be months where you go with very minimal income, but you've got to be willing to see the long-term effect and be like, okay, well, at some point I'm going to accumulate more people, and I'm going to get a better income as a result. So yeah, just be patient. And then outside of that, really keep your eyes peeled, because in February there is going to be something coming that you will be very much interested in, and I highly recommend getting yourself there, because it will be game changing for your coaching business, like absolute game changing. So be there or be square in February, and that will be all announced very soon. So you can look forward to that, Stefan. When to increase calories in an off season? So basically, it's a very simple answer. When your weight is stalled for a period of time, so a week is really not enough. I would like to see sort of a couple of weeks of stall in weight for us to really rationalize an increase, and that's on average. So if we're looking at averages, we're looking at 7 days divided by 7. You get an average over the course of those 7 days, and you'll be able to determine as to whether your weight is heading in the right direction or not. And then you can obviously devise whether you increase calories as a result of that. So yeah, go with your weight, understand where your weight is heading, use averages, and they should lead you into the right direction. Damo, post-workout meal timings for best results. Should wait a little before blood glucose levels lower. I wouldn't be sort of worrying about your blood glucose levels like post-workout. You're going to have created plenty of demand for nutrients anyway through training. And if we look into, obviously, mTOR upregulation and things like that, you're going to have the demand for those nutrients post-workout anyway. So yeah, you want to eat post-workout. Don't wait a million years until your blood glucose has dropped. If anything, blood glucose will be elevated as a result of sympathetic activity when we train. So the whole goal for you to assimilate nutrients really well will be to relax. So that's why, you'll listen to like your chilled out music, you'll try and relax as much as possible post-workout, take calming supplements like magnesium glycinate, potentially even ashwagandha in that window, and then look to eat your meal. So I would just like chill out, in the drive home from the gym to home, just take your time. If you get stuck in traffic, don't get stressed, just breathe, do some nice breathing, get yourself ready for that post-workout meal, and that's really going to come from just relaxing. Don't stress out about your blood glucose being in the right spot. So Damo again, second question: meal sources for intra-workout carbs, foods, not shakes. I mean, I wouldn't really be eating intra-workout. I've seen some people like eat sweets and things like that, but I think if we look at where we want to pull blood, we want to pull blood intramuscular as much as possible. So if we look at the process of digestion, we're going to pull blood as a result of that. So if we want anything intra-workout, we want it to be as easy to digest as possible, so that we're placing as little demand on the digestive tract as we possibly can. It's why I've talked about in previous podcasts about the amount of carbohydrates that we want in a session or in an intra-workout drink, because intra-workouts being too high will again demand too much of the digestive system and pull away from our ability to accumulate blood volume, thus mind-muscle connection, thus pump, thus growth. So really do think about that, mate. I would just use your highly branched cyclic dextrin intra and keep it at that. That is what I would do, okay? And just stick with that. So pre-stage pump up time and exercises and reps. Again, this is very individual. You should be full enough so that you don't have to aggressively pump up like it's your final workout of prep. You should basically just, if there's anything I've noticed with pros and professionals in terms of the way that they do pump ups, they will just get a bit of blood in every body part, high reps with bands, do a bit of posing and really just chill out. I think that people overdo the pump up, and when you overdo a pump up, you lead yourself into a bit of a shit position on stage, because by the time you get to stage, you're gassed and you basically need to stop posing to gather yourself, and that's not going to happen when you're on stage. You've got to keep posing. So yeah, I would say that trying to just get enough of a pump to feel full, which you already should be fairly full, even just relaxed, then you'll be good on stage. And then, you can let your posing do the rest. And if they do multiple rounds of posing, even if you're standing at the back, make sure you're just like getting some blood flow and moving. When you're at the back, do not relax. I love like sort of, I can't really see it because I'm going to keep this as audio, but basically hands on hips. Just holding my lat spread, kind of like a relaxed lat spread, at the back of the stage. It looks quite professional. A lot of people don't do that. They hold a front relax for a bit and they realise how painful it is and they stop. So yeah, I would say that, making sure you're not relaxed at any point on stage, really important. So T-athletic protein intake in the off season, I would say that it's fairly similar for me as it is during prep, potentially a bit higher actually, for reasons that I mentioned in the previous question with regards to trace proteins in your carbohydrates. So it's fairly similar in terms of the ratio, like for body weight comparative to prep. But all I would say is just make sure you're getting a good quality protein source at sort of 20, 25, 30 grams per meal. Splitting those meals evenly across the day, and then just don't stress. Don't stress about it. If you want to try really high protein, then go for it. Will you notice any sort of any change or any huge benefits? I don't think so. Certainly not in an acute period of time. Maybe in a very long period of time, you'll notice some benefits. There was actually some really recent research that was released from Menno Henselmans about protein and its effects on satiety above a certain degree or above a certain intake. So there was some research in that bit of research that came out that was to suggest that beyond a certain point, beyond a certain degree, protein will no longer offer its benefits in terms of satiety as much as it would in its up to this range amount, which is interesting. And a lot of people do claim that they feel satiated or more satiated off fats or more satiated off carbs. And excuse me, this is again personal preference. So really do take personal preference into account. That should help you drastically in terms of setting up your protein intake. But as long as you are at the very lowest 1 gram per pound, you'll be doing all you need to sort of maximize muscle protein synthesis across the course of the day. And if anything, lowering your protein in off season can be helpful, especially if carbs get calories just get very high. So your ability to eat is therefore blunted, and you find it difficult to get in your meals. A lowered protein approach can maybe help you just get in your meals. And again, that's going to be something that's productive, because at the end of the day, just like in a deficit, hitting your calories is the main goal. In a surplus, hitting your calories is the main goal. If you can't hit them because your protein's too high, then you've got issues. Training abs in the off season, surely best time to train them when you're in a surplus to improve. Yeah, I do believe that obviously the thickness of the abs and the density of the abs is really built in the off season. It's something that I've lacked in the past, so I really do try and train abs. Again, it's something that is boring as hell because it's not really something you can progress. But that's what I would recommend is try and progress your ab training. So do a hanging leg raise, and then over the course of weeks and months, try and add kilograms to it. So I'd try and add a dumbbell to it, try and add a little plate to it. If you're doing a cable crunch, try and go up the stack slowly. If you're doing an oblique crunch, try and go up the stack slowly. It's like things like this that just add into your ability to maybe gain some tissue in the abs. Obviously, for female competitors, you've got to be careful to a degree that you don't gain too much sort of blockiness or density to the abs. I don't think this should stop you from training abs at all. If anything, I think it's important because that will help with your midsection control. But again, if you're maybe a female that's just genetically got very blocky abs, I don't think that training them really, really hard and really frequently is going to do you any favors. I remember one female that I followed when I was very new to weight training had the craziest, blockiest abs, but everything else was like normal sized, like bikini sized, and it's going to be really awkward for her if she competed, because she'd have to literally suck up her abdominals in every pose, because otherwise she'd look like weirdly muscular in the midsection. It was like the perfect Men's Health abdominals or midsection, so it just looked a bit skewed in terms of our overall balance and physique. So yeah, I would just say that just see how your physique looks. If your abs are already fantastic, whatever you're doing is probably working. Obviously getting the body fat off will reveal most of the abs. If you're midsection control on stage is poor, or your abdominal development is low, then training your abs in the off season should be an absolute must, and also during prep. The frequency, if your abdominal control is low, should be higher, because again, you want to regain that control of the midsection. You want to understand how to flex it, understand how to, control it within posing. That's very important. One of my clients, Aiden, was really struggling with his midsection control, and it wasn't down to bloating. It was simply down to a poor connection with his midsection. So, Aiden, if you're listening, you better be doing your abs, because otherwise you'll run into the same issue. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Mike. Essentially, the answer is yes, but as always, there is some tangent. Karen, so hey coach. High volume, less intensity versus low reps, high intensity for quads. Again, this is quite individual dependent in terms of response rate. So people will respond to different training stimuluses massively. So someone might really respond well to high rep quad work, and their quads will just balloon over a period of time. Obviously not acutely. You won't do one session and be like, wow, I've grown crazy amounts. It doesn't work like that. But some people might respond really well to high reps, and the way in which to maybe tell is, how do you feel when you do high reps? So do you feel like every rep is more beneficial? Like, do you feel like you're doing more beneficial reps over the course of a high rep set than a low rep set? Some people have fantastic connections with body parts. So for me, I can do a low rep set on back and still contract it really well and get a good set out of it. Some people find that really hard. And then there's other body parts. I think for the quads, I think a balance between the two is probably something that we desire. Is your low reps, high intensity, high reps, less intensity kind of thing. But I think that the role of intensity should apply across all rep ranges. So obviously, if you're trying to just accrue volume and you're doing multiple sets of high repetitions, obviously all of them aren't going to be to failure, but it should still be intense. With lower rep sets, obviously, you might have less of them in total, so you're going to be taking in the grand scheme of things, you're probably going to be taking more of the sets that are low repetitions a little bit closer to failure, because you're doing less of them. But again, it's very individual dependent. So that's why I look for Karen's obviously a client one. In your feedback, it's like, how is your current training going? Like, are you feeling connected to the muscle groups you're training? Are you finding issues with the muscle groups you're training? Are you finding issues with movements? Like, all of these things are really valid data for me as a coach to understand and make good changes in terms of moving forwards and making your training as optimal as possible. Right, so Liam, what do you feel is a desirable amount of total sets per week for a week body part? Again, a very individual dependent question, because our recovery capacity is so different, Liam. So you coming out of a contest prep, right now, your recovery capacity is going to be lower than when you're 20 weeks into your off season and eating 700 grams of carbs a day. So you're at the moment at a point where your overall work for a weak body part might be lower than it is in your off season. So you've just got to be aware of that. Now, in terms of how we gauge it, I've seen, some weak body parts go up to like 20 to 30 sets per week, or even more. Well, not more than 30 actually. I haven't really seen many go above 30. That's just like a lot of fucking work. But I would say in the upper echelons are like 20 to 30 sets, and that's a lot of work. So when you're doing that amount of work, you've got to understand that amount of work, a lot of it's going to be somewhat submaximal, but you can't forget volume, guys. You really can't forget volume and its importance. Like, a big crowd at the moment is like, oh, you only need 2 sets. You only need 2 sets. And like, yeah, you can get away. Like, some body parts will grow off 2 sets. But if you've got a weak body part, like a really weak body part, trying to grow that with just 2 sets per exercise and a maybe 8 working sets total per week, that's just not going to end well. I really don't think it will. What you're feeling as a result of your fatigue is just basically you're battering your CNS with incredibly high intense working sets, which, yeah, they're going to offer benefit. Like, intensity is there to offer benefit. It's going to benefit you. But you can't forget what volume is going to do as well. You can't forget the importance of having volume in your split and enough to bring up a weak body part. So, Liam, your goal over this off season to bring up a weaker area, which I don't really know what it is on you. What is a weak body part on you? Or maybe you're asking for clients, because I think you're quite balanced. Maybe your back, maybe. I'm not too sure that I haven't seen all of your shots, but maybe your back. So let's say your back. I would work it up from like whatever you're doing now and just really steadily increase your volume, and just see how you and what you can respond to. If you find that you can't progress and you're extremely sore, you're doing too much. If you find that you're progressing well and the body part's like growing and you're feeling like it's changing, and you maybe have a little bit more room to push within your overall recovery capacity, then go for more and see what that gives you. Again, it's just this seesaw. So you're trying to balance recovery with the demands for growth. And you just got to have the seesaw effect. And if you nail it, perfect. You're going to make some incredible progress. But if you don't nail it, you just got to reassess. And it's as simple as that. So yeah, that's what I would say, dude. Just like take your time and just constantly reassess where you're at. So I've got 2 more questions. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to do them all. It's just a little bit over 30 minutes, but most of the comments are, can you make these longer? So you got your longer podcast today, guys. What's your preferred method of removing body hair pre-show? I have no preferred method. I hate doing it. It's fucking awful. It's like sitting in the bath. You're cold. You're freezing. If your glutes are lean, it hurts to sit in the bath. So yeah, my preferred method is unfortunately just spending hours in the bath listening to a podcast with a razor. Because I've tried the Veets. I've tried it. Like, trust me, I've tried it, and I end up just burning myself. I burn my skin by, like, putting it on and then reapplying it and then using a shaver to touch it up. And then when you do that, you basically, like, my skin's quite sensitive. So, if I, like, shave it, put Veet on it, and then it just, like, I'll burn. I remember for one of my first shows, I put Veet on, like, my armpits, and then I shaved it on top of it, and then I put more Veet on, and yeah, I just, like, burnt my armpit to a cinder. And like trying to hit a front double was like excruciatingly painful. And I remember it really annoyed me because like I wanted my show day to be pain free, stress free, and oh my god, it was like the worst pain ever, and yeah, it looked infected and fucking awful. What an absolute nightmare. But we learned from these mistakes, and the next time I didn't burn myself, and the show day felt like an absolute breeze in comparison. So yeah, that's my preferred method. Just a razor and just get it done. Just spend some time in the bath with yourself, or get your girlfriend to do it or something. But I didn't have one when I was prepping, so I didn't have that. I think either my mom or my dad did my back. Dear, good times. So yeah, creatine intake, is there an optimal time or doesn't it make a difference? I would say it doesn't make a huge difference. If we look into, again, like when we're going to uptake nutrients the best, maybe pre or post-workout. I think a lot of people put it either pre, intra, or post, again, around the window at which we're maybe going to assimilate nutrients better. But I would say not to really worry about that too much. Just whenever you can remember to take 5 grams, take it. And I'm sure that I'll cover this question again in the future because it seems to be a regular one. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed this podcast or this session, this solo session. I'm sure I'll speak to you very soon. And we will be having maybe a podcast next week because I might be able to get one when I get back from New York. But if not, me and Danny will record something fun for YouTube, whether it be like a vlog or like a day of eating or something like that. That'll be fun. So you can look forward to that. Thank you guys for listening as always. If you have the opportunity to share this, either share me on your stories or just send it to a friend or whatever, that's always appreciated, and it obviously helps share around my content. As I said, look out for the thing in February that's coming up. That's very exciting. I actually forgotten completely to cover my seminar, which was amazing. It was a superb success. We had a great day. We had, I think, almost 4 there. And the day just was fantastic. I wouldn't have changed it for the world. So we had an awesome seminar day there. And like I said, on that note, keep your eye out for February because there's something cool that's going to happen. And lots of exciting things to look forward to in the new year as well. Hope all you guys are well. and I'll speak to you very soon. Cheers, guys. See you in a bit.